Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you, as well as the mercy of Allah and His blessing. I welcome all distinguished guests present today in the first international symposium on educational research entitled Innovative Approaches in Teaching and Learning Strategy within Digital Revolution. This event is hosted by the Educational Research Lab under the guidance of College of Humanities and Sciences at Prince Sultan University, located in Riyadh, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Our sincerest gratitude goes out to our higher management, led by our PSU leader and president, Dr. Ahmed Yamani. We are most thankful for his tremendous support, as well as support for encouragement of the Dean of our beloved college, Professor Mahmoud Al-Mahmoud, and his Vice Dean, Dr. Alia Mitchell. We are so grateful to all the contribution of our keynote speakers, Dr. Al-Yahya, Professor Nessie, Professor Orsini Jones, and Professor Brett Gruffler, as well as our workshop partners. It is a pleasure to welcome our prestigious speaker attending the ERL2021 from different parts of the world. It is all thanks to them that our program is flourishing with distinct and rich topics and presentation. In serving PSU's research initiative, we at the ERL Lab take pride in maintaining research quality, ethics, and integrity. To us, taking on an active role in educational research and the refinement of education is priority. We fulfill this objective through research output, as well as many other channels that include, but not limited to, research seminars, training courses, workshop, webinars, and talks. The ultimate goal is to create a self-sustaining and continuing educational forum where all can contribute to the growth of education. Ladies and gentlemen, let me finally wish you a wholesome and joyous experience at the ERL 2021 International Symposium. I hope that you take from this experience all the good that it has to offer in enriching your knowledge and expanding your understanding of educational research. And now, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce the very foundation of PSU from all progress, encouragement, and strength stem. The Prince Sultan University President, our guide, and our true leader, Dr. Ahmed Yamani, who has to continue to guide us, our supreme and prestigious goal since 2005. Dr. Yamani joined the institution in the year of his establishment as a deputy director. He obtained the bachelor degree in architecture engineering with an honors in 1983 at the University of North Carolina. He also received a master's degree in the same field 4 years later from the same university. In 1992, he completed his PhD in structural engineering at University of Michigan. It is my greatest pleasure to welcome our PSU president, Dr. Ahmed Yamani. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nora. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Respected colleagues, faculty members, guest speakers, and all attendees, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world. We at Prince Sultan University are pleased and delighted to have you all with us online for the opening of the first International Symposium on Education Research, organized by the Education Research Lab at the College of Humanities and Sciences. We are meeting virtually as part of the new norm we are experiencing with COVID-19, which has caused the world some serious challenges, but has also opened the doors for excellent opportunities for global communications. And here we are gathering virtually from different parts of the world to contribute to quality research in education and enhanced dialogue among researchers transcending borders and disciplines. We are indeed honored to have diverse participants from numerous universities from different countries, making our symposium a truly international one. We welcome you all, and we want to thank you for joining us from all around the world on this exceptional occasion. We hope that you all will have an enjoyable, successful, productive, and exceptional symposium. At this time, I would like to highlight that the conference we are about to take part in today is a crucial step towards research development, enhancement, current trends, future direction, and collaboration at the national and international level. Education is a vital aspect in all walks of life, in every country and every culture. Education needs to keep pace with swiftness, innovativeness, and the revolutionization of the digital world. Thus, we encourage and applaud you all for taking part in this step towards educational progress in the wake of the pandemic and choosing PSU as a platform for the event. It is essential to highlight that Prince Sultan University holds the highest standards for education and education practice. At PSU, our aim as an effective contributor to the Kingdom's Vision 2030 is to be at the forefront of higher education and education research, innovation, and development. We are very proud of the efforts of the College of the Humanities and Sciences for taking this initiative and making and teaming with leading researchers to orchestrate this significant event. This is yet another example of the many opportunities for education discussion that have been and will be held at PSU. I would like to extend my thanks and appreciation to all renowned guest speakers, including Dr. Rima Al-Yahya, member of the Shura Council, Professor Hilary Nessie, and Professor Maria Arsene Jones, and from the Cambridge University, UK, and Professor Janina Pratt-Riffler, Associate Dean of International Education and Language Programs Director at the University of Buffalo. I would also like to extend my thanks to our workshop partners, including the University of Buffalo, Dhafar University, Oman, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia Association for Language Teachers, Rawasin, and Ocean X. Sincere thanks are also due to the organizers of today's symposium, who devoted their time and talent in organizing and making this unique international symposium possible. I would like to thank and acknowledge Professor Mahmoud Al-Mahmoud, Dean of the College of Humanities and Sciences and Chair of the ERL Steering Committee, and Dr. Alia Mitchell, Vice Dean, College of Humanities and Sciences, and co-chair of the Steering Committee. And finally, an extended thanks goes out to Dr. Noor Musharraf, Scientific Committee Chair, and the co-chairs of the Scientific Committee, Professor Hala Delbani, and Dr. Joseph Engelman, Adjunct Professor from State University of New York at Buffalo, and Mrs. Maha Al-Jasser, Administrative Assistant of Education Research Lab. In closing, I would like to encourage delegates to participate actively in the symposium discussions. I hope that this conference will create a platform for thoughts among its leaders, academics, practitioners, and researchers to share their ideas and view, inspiring new and workable applications in the field of education. I wish everyone a stimulating and enlightening experience all through the day. Thank you all again, and I trust you will enjoy the rest of the program. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yamani. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the Dean of our college, the College of Humanities and Sciences, Professor Mahmoud Al-Mahmoud. Professor Al-Mahmoud is a professor in the Department of Linguistics and Translation at the College of Humanities and Sciences at Prince Sultan University. His contribution to the college, as well as his cooperation with our ERL lab and the symposium in specific, in spite of the short time he has been with us, is immense. As the dean of our college, he has set a great example for us to follow. His contribution and endeavors to the growth of the CHS and also the PSU's vision transcend above and beyond. It is with tremendous pleasure that I welcome Professor Mahmoud. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Noura. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for the inspiring words. It is a great pleasure to welcome you all to the first International Symposium on Educational Research. I am delighted to welcome you all national and international eminent speakers, organizers, and guests to this event hosted by the Educational Research Lab at the College of Humanities and Sciences at Prince Sultan University. The theme and scope of the ERL2021 Symposium is focused on many aspects, including innovative approaches to teaching and learning within the digital revolution. The aspects in which this theme is examined are concerned with, but not limited to, online and blended learning, teaching with K-12 and higher education, education policy and leadership, quality assurance, testing, evaluation and assessment, and professional development. The impact of this event expands through academic areas of research, presenting crucial outcomes that serve the educational interests of higher education and K-12 education and enhance innovative digital approaches to teaching and learning. The symposium is pivotal from an international stance, and its influence extends regional boundaries in the progress of learning and teaching. Here at the College of Humanities and Sciences at Prince Sultan University, we strive to align our goals with the Saudi Vision 2030, thus paving the way for educational research development and implementing better education and educational policies in Saudi Arabia. We're delighted to have such several national and international speakers, including our dear colleague, Dr. Rima Al-Yahya, member of the Shura Council, Professor Hilary Nessie, and Professor Marina Orsini Jones from Coventry University, UK, Professor Janina Griffler, Associate Dean of International Education and Language Programs, Director at the University of Buffalo. Furthermore, we are honored to have workshops, collaborations with several eminent partners, including the University of Buffalo, the Far University, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia Association for Language Teachers, Rawasan, and Ocean X. I'd like to thank our ERL lab leader, Dr. Noura Al-Musharraf, for her significant contribution. Further, I'd like to thank the ERL co-leaders, Dr. Alia Mitchell and Professor Muhammad Noor Nabi, as well as Ms. Maha Al-Jasser, the Administrative Assistant of Educational Research Lab, and all the ERL lab members for their efforts to support and be part of this event for the sake of research enhancement at large. Most importantly, this significant event and symposium would not have been possible without the guidance and support of our PSU president, Dr. Ahmed Yamani. As I reflect on these past few months, I am indebted to PSU leadership and administration team, in particular, personally to Dr. Ahmed Yamani for his ongoing encouragement and support. The team worked together to effectively facilitate the mission of e-learning, teaching, research, and community services. I sincerely appreciate your collaboration, commitment to our mission, and partnership as we, work together to change the future. Last but not least, I'd like to thank you all for taking part in the first International Symposium on Educational Research. We are here at PSU, we believe that your involvement and contribution and contribution determine the success and the prosperity of this symposium. Wish you all happy sessions and a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Mahmoud. Last but not least, please join me in introducing our college Vice Dean, Dr. Alia Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell is an assistant professor in the Linguistics and Translation Department at the College of Humanities and Sciences and the director of the Teaching and Learning Center at PSU. She continues to be an exemplary figure to all of us here at PSU. We are so grateful for her ongoing support. It is an absolute delight to welcome Dr. Alia. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Noura, and thank you, Dr. Ahmed and Professor Mahmoud, for your profound welcoming speeches for the first International Symposium on Educational Research. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings to all of our guests and presenters today. We welcome you to Prince Sultan University's first International Symposium on Educational Research, with the theme of innovative approaches in teaching and learning strategies within the digital revolution. Prince Sultan University is one of Saudi Arabia's leading universities with a tradition of excellence in teaching, learning, and research. The quality of higher education is at the forefront at PSU. The Educational Research Lab was approved to be established in January 2019 in the hopes of establishing a strong connection between educational research and practice at the institution and beyond. The lab's vision is to bridge the worlds of education, research, and the practice inside the classroom, with the mission of supporting a more evidence-based education system. The Educational Research Lab translates research to practice in partnership with educators, practitioners, and policymakers to develop and use research that improves academic outcomes for students. The Educational Research Symposium is aimed to create an inspiring forum for the speakers and participants to explore, identify, and address the many issues related to education, whether it is related to teaching and learning or quality assurance and academic ideologies. The symposium supports Sustainable Development Goals number 4, ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all. With these presenters, the event is intended to promote research collaboration, lifelong learning, and cooperation among academic leaders and educational institutions. The presentations focus on areas of the Kingdom's 2030 vision and higher education, K-12 and higher education, education policy and leadership, quality assurance and standards, curriculum and material design, testing, evaluation and assessment, critical thinking, professional ethics, online and blended learning teaching, and digital literacies. Symposium is a valuable platform for individuals to present their research findings, display their work in progress, and discuss conceptual advances in many different areas and specialities within the field of education. And given that we are recovering from a pandemic, the fruits of their research should prove beneficial for all. It also offers the opportunity for researchers and educators to meet, discuss, and share knowledge. Prince Sultan University continues and aspires to advance research and academic excellence in the region. The wide range of papers and topics presented at the symposium will ensure an exciting and productive event. It is hoped that all participants in this symposium will find it informative, productive, engaging, and enjoyable. To everyone who worked on making this event happen, your contributions are well recognized, and we appreciate your magnificent effort. Thank you for all that you do to meet the exceptional standards of our institution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alia. And now kindly take a few minutes to reflect and participate in this poll. Will be presented in your screen in few seconds.
Greetings everyone from Prince Sultan University, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I'm Dina Dachs, the chair of the Linguistics and Translation Department, and it's a great pleasure and honor to moderate the first keynote speech at the first International Symposium on Education Research that is organized by the Educational Research Lab. We've enjoyed such inspiring talks by Dr. Yamani, Professor Mahmoud, and Dr. Mitchell. And now we will pursue the enlightenment and the inspiration with a keynote speech by Dr. Rima Yahya, who is very dear and close to the hearts and minds of so many people, particularly at Prince Sultan University. Dr. Rima Yahya is a member of the Shura Council, and she is one of the first Saudi women to have her PhD thesis recommended for public publishing. Dr. Rima was appointed chairperson of the English and Translation Department at Princess Noor University for 3 consecutive years. In 2016, Dr. Rima was awarded the title of Goodwill Ambassador for Peace and Women's Development in Saudi Arabia, as well as winning the Educational Leadership Award in the same year. She was appointed as the first female vice rector of Prince Sultan University for 7 years. Then she was appointed over one of the first female deputy ministers in the Ministry of Education, holding the title of Deputy Minister for Private Higher Education. So I'm sure that so many people are awaiting this talk. Dr. Yahya, thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Dina. Thank you for an amazing introduction. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh jami'an. I would also like to welcome everyone to the first International Symposium on Educational Research. It is an honor for me to participate in an event held in a place that was and still is very special to me. I would like to thank Dr. Ahmed Al-Yamani, President of Prince Sultan University, for his remarkable efforts in making sure PSU excels and stamps its mark on the academic map of Saudi Arabia and becoming one of the most prestigious, leading, and sought-after universities in the country. I would also like to thank His Highness Prince Abdulaziz bin Ayaf Al Saud for leading this institution and providing the moral and financial support needed to ensure PSU truly implements its vision and mission. Last but not least, I would like to applaud the efforts of the Educational Research Lab, College of Humanities and Sciences, for organizing this much-needed symposium with professionalism and efficiency, and of course, the College Dean, Professor Mahmoud al-Mahmoud, who has made the college his priority and devoted his time to ensure it excels. During these past 2 years, we have all faced and been challenged by a pandemic that has rocked our lives in a way we have never imagined possible. But like all bad things, something good usually comes out of it. We have become more resilient, resourceful, and creative, especially in a world that has revolved digitally. With every new advancement in the digital world, we have become more skilled in developing our vocations, especially as educators, through our, quote, teaching and learning strategies. Digital learning is revolutionary. It is continuously changing with every new advancement in technology. Today's technology allows us to personalize the learning experience to suit our individual learning needs and schedules. It puts us in control of our learning process. If used properly, digital learning can challenge and engage students in ways traditional learning could never achieve. The secret is finding the most engaging teaching strategies, for when students are engaged with the lesson being taught, they will learn more and retain the information in a better manner. They will be encouraged to use their imagination, to dig deep when engaging with the content of the lesson. Students will tend to persist more and find joy in the learning process. The unique feature of digital learning is that it is adaptable to all levels of learning and can be customized to challenge all age groups, from animated learning to jigsaws to QR codes. theme of this symposium on educational research is innovative approaches in teaching and learning strategies within the digital revolution. Whether we are teaching K through 12 levels or higher education, it is becoming more difficult to engage young minds in the classroom. Not because they are not interested in learning or have a low attention span, but because they are constantly exposed to technology. So we need something new to grasp their attention and retain it for a while. There are many innovative strategies that have improved student engagement. I will discuss a few briefly. Inquiry-based learning, QR codes, project or problem-based learning, jigsaws, and wisely managed classroom technology. Inquiry-based learning is one of the most powerful teaching strategies in the classroom because students learn best when they research a topic on their own, ask questions they need answers for, present their findings, and then reflect on what worked about the process and what did not. This is what is called deep learning, and the teacher's role is that of the facilitator. Inquiry-based learning allows students to pose the questions and research and convert the information into useful knowledge, thus ramping up the level of student engagement. QR codes. We are using them automatically in our daily life routine. Even asking for a menu in a restaurant is no longer possible, and we have to scan the QR code through our smartphones. Quick response codes nowadays are used constantly, as not only are they efficient, but easy to create. Students are led to information just by scanning the code on their digital device, and there are many ways we can use QR codes. We can check answers. We can vote on answers during class discussions, see the survey results, participating in survey polls and contests, accessing video tutorials and material being taught, and linking students directly to Google Maps. Project-based learning. It uses real-world scenarios, challenges, and problems to engage students in critical thinking, problem solving, and teamwork, and self-management. Once students solve the problem or the challenge, they present their solutions. Because project-based learning is filled with active and engaging learning, it inspires students to obtain a deeper knowledge of the subjects they are studying. Research also indicates that students are more likely to retain the knowledge gained through this approach far more readily than through traditional textbook-centered learning. Examples of project-based learning are planning a garden that meets a specific design objective, and plant and tend the garden. At the end of the growing season, iterate the design to improve it for the next season based on how the garden was or was not successful in meeting the objectives, or launching a recycling program that solves an identified problem with existing recycling programs. This can be done at a household level or a school level or a neighborhood level or even a city level. Analyzing the 5 most popular social media platforms for teens, then predict and design a new platform based on existing trends and past trajectory of change, or solving the problem of negative or fake news, or designing a new app that will have social and intellectual value. Another strategy is jigsaws. The jigsaw classroom is a research-based cooperative learning technique invented and developed in the early 1970s. It reduces racial conflict and increases positive educational outcomes, such as improving test performance, reduces absenteeism, and creates a greater liking for school. Just as a jigsaw puzzle, each piece or student's part is essential for the completion and understanding of the final product. And when each student's part is essential, then that means each student is essential, and that is what makes the strategy so effective. Also, wisely managed classroom technology. Technology can promote innovative teaching techniques, from accessing real-world case studies online, to watching video recorded lectures, to listening to podcasts. Technology opens up the possibility for teaching innovation, including collaborative group work and flipped and hybrid classrooms. Much research has proven that hybrid classrooms help improve students' soft skills, critical thinking skills, and problem-solving techniques, as well as their computer and technical skills. Technological innovations are having a significant impact on educational systems at all levels. Online courses, teaching aids, educational software, social network tools, and other emerging technologies are disrupting the traditional classroom environment. First of all, it's a well-known fact that students, whether K through 12 or higher education, prefer to learn through hands-on activities and collaborating with their peers rather than just sitting and listening to an instructor or a teacher's lectures, where the tendency is to have their minds veer to other thoughts or daydreaming or even engaging with their peers. In the past, transitioning in traditional teaching would be moving the class venue from the classroom to the courtyard or having contests in class. But now the digital era has broadened our horizons and the use of technological innovations are limitless. Top 6 technological innovations for education. There are so many, but for me, I think that these are the top technological innovations that are very effective in the classroom. Virtual reality in education, artificial intelligence and machine learning, cloud computing for education, 3D printing, social media in educational institutions, and biometrics in schools. Virtual reality in education. I will give examples that I think are very effective. One, taking field trips with your students through Google Earth VR and Google Expeditions without even leaving the classroom. Expanding the students' social experiences with other students around the world and sharing VR field trips through Outspace, VR, and Facebook Spaces. The diversity is mind-boggling. Students interact with students from other countries and by this learn about other cultures, heritages, and traditions in a very engaging way. New 360-degree art canvas to work with, like Oculus VR's Tilt Brush and Gravity Sketch, and it can be very helpful in product design and coding. It is a must for interior design students to add to their manual skills. Not only will it be a unique way to support lessons, but also extend our students' hobbies or interests in art, and it is also beneficial to enhance extracurricular activities. Another platform is Engage Education Platform, and it has 36-degree modeling and demonstrations, which provide a new and exciting environment for our traditional show and tell for our students. In the past, show and tell would be our students bringing something to class and speaking about it. And this is a sure way to explore new ideas in a more digital manner. The Time Loop app lets students experience historic moments and is like a time machine to the past or the future. They can travel to the Stone Age or to any other country or even to space. They have access to places they might never have the opportunity to visit in real life, and it can expand their knowledge. Artificial intelligence and machine learning. Machine learning is a concept which allows the machine to learn from examples and experience. The machines do not write the codes, and instead of that, data is fed in the generic algorithm. The algorithm that machine builds is the logic based on the given data, and they help in, as you can see, adaptive learning. It increases efficiency in education, learning analytics, predictive analytics, personalized learning, and evaluating assessments. Let's start with the first one. Adaptive learning, also known as adaptive teaching, is an educational method which uses computer algorithms as well as artificial intelligence to orchestrate the interaction with the learner and deliver customized resources and learning activities to address the unique needs of each learner. In adaptive learning, the basic premises is that the tool or the system will be able to adjust to the student or the user's learning method, which results in better and more effective learning experience for the user rather than providing a one-size-fits-all learning experience. Adaptive learning helps students solve their unique trouble spots. Machine learning, such as learning analytics, increases efficiency, and it will also help improve retention rates. By identifying at-risk students, schools can reach out to those students and get them the help they need to be successful. Another way machine learning will improve education is by grouping students and teachers according to their needs and availability. It enhances learning outcomes so students can learn at their own pace, create their schedules, and enjoy every part of their lives. It improves the learning assessment process so it can automatically help teachers grade work with less human interference, giving teachers the potential to save time, and it also decreases grading bias, which is very important. It also improves research and discovery. Possible applications would include detecting paraphrase plagiarism and image modifications, predicting high-impact research and emerging subject areas, augmenting the peer review process, and automated or semi-automated content creation based on human input. It could also improve accessibility by verbalizing visual content for visually impaired learners and create automated video captions for the deaf and hard of hearing, and it can predict career paths for our students. Learning analytics, and it refers to the collection and analysis of data about learners and their environments for the purpose of understanding and improving learning methods and outcomes. It can trace learning behaviors for the sake of improving the skills of the students and improve the teaching and learning process. More often than not, learning analytics provides the methods and tools to collect student data during the delivery of a lesson in order to update individual student profiles. There are many benefits of learning analytics, such as, okay, so it's obvious I lost my enthusiasm in this slide, it's so bland. But anyhow, some of the examples are, we can track our students' progress and give better feedback. We can monitor students' activity in online course discussions. We can measure the impact of the student engagement with course material on their course grades. And we can improve curriculum design based on the students' learning patterns or needs. And we can monitor student and class activity in the course site. Predictive analytics can help instructors pinpoint students' learning gaps, thus customizing the academic experience so it better aligns with how students learn. It identifies patterns and the likelihood of future outcomes, thus ensuring success for both student and instructor in the teaching and learning process. Data collected would include high school transcripts, financial data, demographic data, as well as data on extracurricular activities. All these examples can be partnered with behavioral data collected from social media sites, the messages they send, whatever they try to share with others. The negative side to predictive analytics is that it may often overlap with privacy issues. How much is enough, and how private will the information be? And who is responsible for ensuring the safety of the student's information? Personalized learning. It is also an educational approach that aims to customize learning for each student's strengths, his needs, his skills, and interests. Each student is given a learning plan. Hence, the teacher does not lead all students through the same lesson. Instead, the teacher guides each student on an individualized journey, pinpointing what works best for him or her. Evaluating assessments is also the process of using the measurements gathered in the assessment, meaning teachers use the information to judge the relationship between what was intended and what was learned. Most often than not, students underachieve because of the fact that they have not grasped an awareness of the level of the assessment or what the lecturer or instructor expects from them. Assessment data can be obtained directly from examining students' work to assessing the achievements of the learning outcomes. Cloud computing for education. Yes.
Rima, if we could just have a couple more minutes because we'll have questions after that.
Okay. Cloud computing for education allows students to access homework or assignments, whether there is an internet connection, and teachers can instantly upload learning materials for their students, as well as administrators who can also use it to easily collaborate with one another and save money on data storage, and everything is kept safe. 3D printing is very beneficial for our students and educators, especially in the engineering field, because it transforms how products are designed and produced and serviced without the use of actual equipment or tools. You can imagine how cost-effective this is, as well as efficient and resourceful. Social media in education, and this is very important to discuss, it helps students, teachers, and parents to get more useful information, to connect with the learning groups and other educational systems that make education convenient. Through these networks, one can incorporate social plugins that enable sharing and interaction. Students can form online tutorials through YouTube or online courses. Also are very effective are Facebook, MySpace, blogs, Twitter, and Delicious. For those unfamiliar with Delicious, it's a social bookmarking web service for storing, sharing, and discovering webmarks. Facebook and other, and I love to use it, by the way. Facebook and other social media have been hailed as delivering the promise of new, socially engaged educational experiences for students and undergraduate, self-directed, and other educational sectors. Now, the downside of using social media in education is that one may lose control. I, for one, will go into one of my social media apps to look for something, and then I cannot resist to look at other things I never intended to read, or search for specific information on one of the more famous search engines, and then veer to sites that are never ending. It is also time commitment, and you might find unnecessary information or receive information overload. WhatsApp is also an app which I am sure most educators use to connect with their students, send urgent messages, discuss various topics with their students, and is honestly a great way to engage the students in expressing their views, especially those whom have difficulty with participating in class. Also, podcasts are very useful in teaching. They are serial recordings posted regularly online. Basically, podcasts are the technology-based equivalent of oral lectures. The advantage of podcasts are that they are flexible and reusable. They are also a great teaching source for the hearingly impaired. Last, what I would also like to discuss is that the Voicethreads, and this is an excellent in building student engagement. It is a web service that allows users to upload PowerPoint slides, videos, photos, as well as add voice narration to create a multimedia presentation. Voicethread is an application that runs inside your web browser, and it allows you to transform collections of media like images, videos, documents, and presentations into a place for conversation. These conversations are not live, but take place whenever it's convenient for the people to participate. They are also secure with simple controls that let you dictate who can participate and what they can do. Educators use Voicethreads for many different reasons, from extending and documenting classroom conversations, online tutoring, virtual class spaces, professional development training, and 1,000 other things in between. Some of the advantages of the Voicethread are as follows. I'll just mention two. It starts student-driven discussions with better understanding, and it's a great way to deliver projects and solicit feedback for both students and colleagues. Last, the use of biometrics in schools. There are a variety of ways to use biometrics in schools. Examples would be automatic fingerprint identification, iris and retina scanning, face or voice recognition, and hand geometry. And all of the above can be very useful in school registration, library book borrowing, cashless catering, and entering halls or labs. What makes it unique is that you cannot use it like a swipe card, and institutions can keep track of anyone entering or leaving an area. This is also an excellent means of minimalizing vandalism. In conclusion, the digital era has boosted education to another dimension that is more intriguing and creative. Using these strategies and techniques, we are able to prepare our students for the future and the careers they decide to embark on. Learning and teaching have never been more fun and intuitive. In all honesty, it has never been a better time to become an educator or a student. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rima, for such an enlightening talk. So many creative ideas and really all the different approaches that we can use as educators to enhance the learning of our students. I particularly like the conclusion, which is it's the digital age has really taken us to another dimension as educators and also as students. And I would like to ask, now that we are moving to a new dimension, are educators ready? And how can we prepare them to handle these new challenges and the big transition that we are witnessing? What advice would you give institutions with regards of helping the educators moving through this transition?
Well, first of all, and I'm pretty sure that it automatically comes with every new development that's happening in our daily lives. Every new technology is there. If you have a child who's 2 years old, to an educator who teaches higher education, to a professor in any kind of institution, technology it forces itself on us. It is there without even us trying to learn new ways. I think that it is very important for all institutions to make sure that they have a digital or a technological a center that helps the faculty with whatever they need. It helps the students. Having online tutorials constantly, giving workshops, trying to show our faculty whatever is new or new technology in education, and encourage them to use them.
One last question due to time constraints and the other sessions we have. There are so many options to choose from. You have kindly shared, amazing opportunities and amazing approaches that we can use. As an educator, what principle should I follow in order to choose what to use, when, how? There are so many options out there.
You have to customize it to your students. It depends on who you're teaching, what the level of mentality you're working with, what kind of group of students you are, and then you have to customize it with the class. It's not a one size fits all. Whatever you feel is suitable for your students. We all have taught maybe from K through 12 to higher education, and not every group or cohort of students are the same and on the same level. So you just have to make sure that you know what is more suitable for your students at that time. It's a very good way to mingle and mix a variety of different technologies and strategies, and just using one will not be enough. You have to try to combine as many as you can, or whatever you think is suitable, to ensure the effectiveness of your teaching methods.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rima. We can go on and on with questions, learning from your valuable expertise, but we're limited with time. Thank you once more for such an enlightening and inspiring talk. And everybody, the Educational Research Lab still has a lot for you in store. So we can go now to rooms 2 and 3 for 3 paper presentation sessions. And then you could come back to room 1 at 11:30 for another plenary speech by Professor Hilary Dacey. Thank you so much and enjoy the day.
Thank you.
Hello once more, everyone, for our second plenary speech. Thank you for joining us again. And I'm really, truly honored to be moderating this session with Professor Hilary Dacey. One of the main figures of Corpus linguistics. And the talk today is about digital learning using Corpus tools. We are really honored to have this talk and Professor Hilary as part of our program. Professor Dacey is a professor of English language at Coventry University. Her research interests mostly concern the discourse of English for academic purposes and the design and use of dictionaries and reference tools. She was principal investigator for projects to create the Corpus of British Academic Spoken English, the Corpus of British Academic Written English, and the ESRC founded Writing for a Purpose project to produce academic writing materials for the British Council Learn English website. She was the co-author of Genres Across the Disciplines, Student Writing in Higher Education, Cambridge University Press 2012, and is the lead educator for the FutureLearn MOOC, Understanding English Dictionaries. She's one of the editors-in-chief of the reputed Journal of English for Academic Purposes. We're all looking forward to the talk, Professor Daisy. Thank you once more for accepting our invitation. And without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Al-Dakhshan. Thank you for inviting me, and hello, everybody. So I'm looking at digital learning using Corpus tools. Just trying to, can't move the, yes, here we are. So this is the sort of outline of the talk. To begin with, I'm going to just be talking about what corpora are, and then I'm going to go on and give some examples of how they can be used for teaching and learning. So apologies to all of you who think you know already what corpora are. I'm sure many of you do, but I thought it would be worthwhile starting with that because there are some misconceptions and it can be a little bit contentious what should be in a corpus and what shouldn't be in a corpus. So I'll use a quotation from John Sinclair that I still think is a pretty useful definition of what a corpus is. You can see here a collection of pieces of language text in electronic form, selected according to external criteria to represent as far as possible a language or language variety source of data for linguistic research, right? So just to unpack that, it has to be in electronic form. I suppose it seems pretty obvious. I mean, there were things that were called corpora and concordances before computers were invented, but they were so laborious to create and to search that they were only used for very prestige texts, like works of Shakespeare or something like that. It's not just that they have to be in electronic form, it's also that they have to involve the use of software tools. And that sometimes is a problem for people who are starting with the idea they want to try out corpus linguistics because they're not familiar with the tools that they can use. You probably have heard of things like AntConc, yeah, a free downloadable corpus software. There are a number of corpus tools available. We use Sketch Engine, which our corpora are freely available on Sketch Engine, but takes a bit of time to get used to Sketch Engine. It's not something that you just open up and instantly understand how to use. In fact, on the BOR website, there is a little kind of mini textbook called Using Sketch Engine with BOR. If that's I'll talk about the BOR corpus in a little while. But if you wanted to learn how to use Sketch Engine, you might find it useful to open up that little, it's like a mini textbook, because there are lots and lots of things you can do with software tools, but they're a bit perhaps frightening when you first see them. And corpora have to be for linguistic research. So obviously you can create any number of collections of text and electronic forms. I mean, you can have an edited collection in a book is a collection of text and electronic form if it's an ebook, but that's not a corpus, because the whole point of a corpus is that you're not looking at individual texts or their content. You're looking at large quantities of text to find out what is typical in terms of phraseology, grammar, lexis, and so on. So it's got to be, the focus has got to be on the language, not on the contents. And it has to be selected to represent a language or language variety. So that, in very large terms, you could talk about a national corpus or international corpus of a given language, like the British National Corpus. Quite a few people work with registers, so they have a corpora of conversation or newspapers or fiction or academic text, very often they have subcorpora of these and they compare them. Or you can look at particular genres, such as research articles or student essays or lectures. You've got to be clear what it is your corpus is trying to represent. The trend nowadays is to have bigger and bigger and bigger corpora, trillions of words. You might have come across this. There's some huge corpora out there, but they've sacrificed representation for size. So they will, if you search a trillion word corpus, you'll find examples of just about every form you can imagine. But you won't find much information about where that language is used, or any sense of the purpose of using it in that particular context, or why you might want to use it in one context but not in another, because they don't give information about the genre or the even whether it's spoken or written, whether it comes from a website. They usually come from websites, actually, these very, very large corpora. So they're good for natural language processing, but they're perhaps not so good for language teaching, where we're trying to help people to produce language that's appropriate in a given context. So this idea of representing the language is a very important consideration. And I always make the point that the language of a text varies according to context. And this means that it's in time, how old it is, because language changes over time. Delivery mode, so that means whether it's spoken or written, but also whether it's online or face-to-face, or was intended to be read aloud or to be read on screen. The purpose, why was this text produced, and who was going to engage with this text? These are all really important things that English language teachers need to know about, because if they want their students to use language appropriately, so it doesn't matter on the topic. I used to observe classes of trainee teachers. I'm sure quite a lot of you do that too. And often trainees would have dreamed up a lesson for class, and they'd come in and the topic would be something like ships or trains or something like that. And they'd have collected a selection of texts to use in class on this topic. And really, they were overwhelming the students with lots and lots of different types of language, because, yeah, the topic was the same, but the genres and the purposes of those texts were completely different. So the language was completely different. So a research article, a textbook chapter, student essay, a lecture, I'm just going to move. That's right, a lecture, a TED talk on the same topic. They'll all be linguistically different. They'll all be organized differently because of the context in which they were produced and the reasons they were produced, and who they were talking to. And that's very important when you consider making corpora. So another point I wanted to make was that English language teachers do need to discover how language is used to communicate outside the classroom. And I feel very strongly about this. Texts that are produced just for classroom purposes don't really tell you very much about how language is used outside the classroom. My belief is that corpora have to contain authentic texts, and they should have some metadata attached to them, which tells you about their original context. And that raises the question of whether learner corpora actually meet Sinclair's definition of what a corpus is. I mean, do they represent a language variety? I'm not sure if most of them do, because unless you're collecting learner texts that are produced for a communicative purpose outside the classroom or outside the language classroom, then they've just been made up to satisfy the requirements of a particular class. And they don't give you any insight into how language, I mean, they might be useful for identifying a few typical grammatical errors that learners make, but they don't really help with phraseology, or they're not much use for teaching and learning otherwise. That's my view. You might disagree. I know lots of people do. I often have arguments about learner corpora with people. So you probably know that corpus findings are increasingly inform all these things. You can't really, any modern dictionary or grammar book or word list or even textbook, at least produced in the West, it's almost certain that the corpora have informed them in some way. So dictionaries are produced based on corpora, aren't they? And a lot of textbook writers nowadays take their texts from corpora and devise activities which are sort of corpus activities, in that they might take concordance lines and ask learners to decide on what words are appropriate in which context and so on. Just a word about that, actually. There are dictionaries that are produced which give a lot of examples, generates automatically a lot of examples, and they're quite inappropriate because they take them from things like corpora of tweets, things like that, because they're readily available online. And you get some very, very funny examples in some e-dictionaries, not the good ones, but there are a lot of e-dictionaries around which have really strange examples that go back to what I was saying before about having to know what the context of your texts are if you're going to use a corpus. Okay, so you've got corpus information in dictionaries and textbooks and grammar books and so on, but it doesn't necessarily inform the way that we teach. And very often I've found this, although I know of language learners who are using dictionaries and grammar books which are based on corpora, they're not even aware of that. They don't even know that a corpus was used to develop the book that they're using, and they don't care because they're just interested in the rules. They don't care how those rules were generated. All the work's been done for them. That's sort of traditional, part of the traditional deductive learning methodology, isn't it? That you present the rules, the teacher, the textbook, the dictionary presents the rules, the student absorbs them, everybody knows what has to be learnt, and nobody is really thinking, nobody's exploring the language. They're just, except the people who created the dictionary, the people who created the dictionary or the grammar book have explored the language, but the teachers and the learners are not exploring the language. They're just taking as read whatever is in the teaching materials. And corpus techniques for language teaching are the opposite of this, because they suggest that really the learner has to discover. The learner goes to the corpus to discover for themselves. So what the language teacher is doing is providing a context for the learner to learn how to learn. This is called data-driven learning. I don't know, some of you will have heard of this, some of you will not, I guess. DDL, it's called. So the person who developed DDL was Tim Johns. He was an English language teacher at Birmingham University. He's dead now. He worked very extensively in the 1980s and 90s. And there's a website here with a link if you want to go and have a look at they're really lessons that he did with his students back then. but they're still excellent. He called them kibitzers. What he did was, because he was an English, he had a situation where he had an office and he had a timetable, and students individually signed up to have one-to-one sessions with him, short one-to-one sessions. They had to come to him with a query, and he didn't necessarily know the answer to that query. In fact, he usually didn't know the answer to that query. So they would come in and say, I don't know what language to use here. I don't know why my tutor said that this was wrong. And then together, Tim and the student would have a look at a corpus and see if they could work out what the answer was. So here are some typical queries. These are not queries that teachers raised, they're queries that the learners raised. Or maybe they'd written something for their subject tutor and the tutor had said, that's the wrong word, or I don't like the way that you've written here, but hadn't explained. So I don't know the answer to these questions. And Tim didn't know the answer to these questions. The only thing we can say is, hey, let's go to a corpus and have a look and see what the evidence is. Maybe it depends on the context. Maybe it depends on what kind of text it is, whether it's spoken or written, or whether it's academic or non-academic, or whether it's what kind of audience it's for, or what discipline it's in. So really the best DDL queries are ones you can't find answers to in standard reference books. So the principles of Strong Ddl is that learners have direct access to raw linguistic data. So they go straight to a corpus. They might generate hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of concordance lines. Nobody knows what they're going to find. And they're forming hypotheses, testing them, working things out for themselves. They're looking at the concordance data and noticing, and the theory is that because they're so deeply involved in examining this corpus data, they're processing it, they're learning better. But they have to be quite sophisticated. Tim John's students were, a lot of them were postgraduate students, and they were prepared to take the time. And I don't know how many of you have tried using Corpora in the classroom, but it does take a long time for learners to get their heads around basic ideas like concordancing and keyword analysis and collocation and so on. It's not something that they can understand instantly. So I mean, here's some concordance lines, for example. I mean, you may see patterns there instantly, but not a lot of students won't. They'll just look at it and read it as if they'll read it horizontally, not vertically. And of course, when you read concordance lines, you're supposed to read down and look for patterns. So weaker DDL may be more appropriate, where learners have indirect access to adapted data, they're guided, and the teacher manipulates the concordance lines. And some of what's to be learned may be decided in advance. So here's an example from Alex Bolton, based in France. And he's giving an example of how to do this online. So the student is at a distance. The student has written an important number of studies. So the teacher emails a link to an online corpus and says, how many occurrences of an important number are there in the corpus? And then says, okay, so click on, look up number, what adjectives precede number, and are they saying what you want to say? And gradually, the student comes to realize that important doesn't mean big, which is what they meant. So they're sort of learning through looking at the concordance. Now, there's a lot of...
And I see 3 minutes, okay?
Oh my goodness, can I just go on a little bit? Because I've got
5 minutes. Just allow for questions.
I've got 10 minutes left yet.
I was hoping to have time for questions.
Oh, all right. Okay, so I'll go through quickly. So here are 2 publicly available corpora that you probably know about, Basin 4. And they're online, which is important because that means that if you're doing this kind of online DDL, the students can go straight online. You know, they don't have to have their own software, which is problematic for a lot of students. And you can see, as a teacher, you can see what corpus they're using, and you can work together. And they're both freely available. So here's a project that we've been involved with called Quick Links, which involves creating links to some common problems that students have in their writing. So we prepare the links. The teacher doesn't have to do this. All they need to do is to choose a link. And here's some examples. I'll just do the examples quickly and then we can have questions. So for example, a student writes, Ellis supports that formal grammar teaching has a delayed effect on language teaching. Now that is an error. It's not frequent and it's not obvious how a student could check. So if you just say, oh, that's wrong, that's not going to help the student. They don't know why. And if they look it up in a grammar book, they probably won't find it why either. So you choose a link. Here's the link. Here's the concordance lines they see. And the first thing they see is that it doesn't usually have a human subject. So we don't normally say a person supports. We say a thing supports, a theory or something. We also see, right, that there needs to be a noun between support and that. Yeah. So just looking at those selected concordances, they may notice that pattern. And the teachers can choose whether to point this out or leave it to the students to discover. But what the teacher does is insert the link into the electronic text that the student has written. And then it's up to the student. They can click on the link and they can see these selected concordance lines. There is on this site, there is quite a bit of information to help students and teachers. Okay, so I've come to the end. And if you want to learn more about this, we did have an event in 2018 with quite a lot of videos and slides from speakers talking about DDL, which, you know, if you want to explore this further, there, finished.
Thank you so much, Professor Desi. An enlightening talk, extremely informative, theory and practice. And actually, let me quote the ERL Lab co-leader, Dr. Alia Mitchell, at the beginning of the opening session. She was talking about the aims of the ERL, the Educational Research Lab, and part of it is to encourage evidence-based learning and to bridge the gap between research and practice. And
yes.
This is exactly what I think corpus studies fit.
Absolutely.
Beautifully.
Yes, absolutely.
So if I could ask what the first question is, in light of how corpus can bridge the gap between research and practice, how far do you think textbook writers or classroom teachers are making use of the findings using corpus to reflect in language learning?
Oh, massively nowadays. I mean, I don't know about textbooks produced in Saudi Arabia, but in Britain, of course, was probably a very early adopter of corpora. And particularly the West Midlands, of course, with the COBIL project. So in our area of the UK, corpus studies have been going on for a long time, since the early 1980s, probably late 1970s. But nowadays, if I pick up a grammar book or a dictionary or a textbook, very, very often there's some mention of. It's not necessarily overt. I mean, it might just be mentioned somewhere in the blurb surrounding the book. So, as I said, students might not be aware of it, but the textbook writers and the materials writers have gone to corpora to check things and to get examples and so on. Yeah, so it's very, very common. The students don't necessarily know that. I mean, students don't know, you know, they might not even have heard of the word corpus.
So, it's great to know that textbook writers are already starting or massively using it in some. But what about if you move to the teachers and students' perspective? Because you rightly pointed out that with the use of Corpus, we can encourage learners to learn through data-driven learning, and also to recognize the language varieties. Because language students usually in EFL classrooms are very much like they expect language to be one variety.
Yes, that's right.
So how do you think teachers and can use freely resources?
That's the problem, isn't it? I mean, there aren't enough corpora freely available representing the different varieties of English. That's one problem. So there's some good general corpora out there, but there are fewer corpora in the public domain that represent particular varieties of English. Now, I don't know what kinds of varieties of English the audience are interested in. It's been tackled by do-it-yourself corpora with things like research articles. There is no publicly available corpus of research articles for copyright reasons, really. But lots of teachers have got their students to develop corpora for themselves in the classroom of research articles. And if there's students who need to read research articles and write research articles, that can be very useful. They can compare their own writing to the writing in research articles in their discipline and in the kind of journals that they are interested in. But when it comes to other types of writing, there's not that much available, and speaking even less. So there's a lack of corpora with particular varieties of language.
And this leaves room for further research.
Yes.
This is a great opportunity.
Huge amount of scope to develop corpora. Absolutely, yes. Because we really need them.
And actually, also in Arabic, this would be
a
lot of work.
Right. Yes. I mean, yes, there are corpora of Arabic available, and I suppose you know that. But I don't know if there are any corpora. They're general Arab, then for general purposes. I don't know if there are any corpora of Arabic for in specific types of contexts. It'll be very interesting.
There are very good attempts by King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology and elsewhere, and some other universities in Saudi Arabia. So hopefully we'll see.
But presumably they're developing corpora to represent that. That's another slight problem, actually. I mean, I don't know if it's the case in this particular case, but national corpora often want to showcase the beauty of the national language. So they contain lots of literature, sort of examples of the greatest literature. And that's all very well, but it's not necessarily the kind of language that people want to use on a daily basis.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
A lot of national corpora contain masses of prestige texts and very little of the day-to-day text that, you just encounter in daily life, like, shopping lists and emails and things like that.
I have a question here from Sarah Azir, and she's saying, do you think it's worth training teachers on Corpus tools, even if they don't plan to use them with students nor to plan their teaching, or at least informing them that many of the resources they use are Corpus informed?
I think, well, you know what I'm going to say to that, don't you? I'm not going to say no. I mean, I really do. I mean, I think it's a fantastic boon for teachers. It's marvelous. I mean, if you're creating if you want to create some materials, or just pick out some good examples that fit your students' needs, if you know how to use a corpus, it's brilliant. I mean, it's really not an opportunity to miss, I would have said. Even if you're not going to use DDL or corpus activities in the classroom. Yeah. I mean, there's a weak form of DDL where you put everything on, you create your materials, you put them on paper, so the students never actually go directly to the corpus, but they're still looking at materials that are generated by the corpus.
We have time for one more question. I have a question from Ruchi Sehgal. What is the procedure to initiate a project based on a corpus?
What do you mean? Do you mean creating a corpus or
I guess a research project using corpus.
Well, I mean, there's lots and lots of research.
Ruchi has just said creating a corpus. Yes.
Oh, creating a corpus. Now that's a different matter. I mean, it's much easier to conduct research on an existing corpus than it is to create one. And if you create one, then if you haven't got money from some source or other, then it's only going to be a small corpus. And if it's only going to be a small corpus, then you should try to focus on one very specific type of text, because there's no use trying to cover all kinds of text if you've only got a small budget. So I would say, you might want to focus on an under-researched type of text, spoken or written, which you can get access to. If it's spoken, of course, then you've got to transcribe it. You can automatically transcribe these days and then check. Yeah, I mean, if I was doing some research and I wanted to create my corpus, I would first of all start with the problem. What is a type of text that my students need to engage with, and not enough is known about it. Not enough is known about the language of this type of text, and the vocabulary and the grammar and so on. And then, having established that, I would then collect examples of that text, put them in a corpus, and conduct some corpus queries of various kinds to try and discover what the linguistic features of that corpus is. And then you could focus on a particular linguistic feature, depending on the type of text, and what you thought your students' problems were.
Thank you so much, Professor Nacy. The talk was enlightening and the discussion was extremely interesting. We could go on for hours.
Yeah,
so
I didn't realize you were going to cut me off after 20 minutes.
I'm sorry. It's just because of the time for 30 minutes.
Yes,
we're allotted. Thank you so much. Really such an honor to have you with us at the symposium. And everyone, thank you very much for attending the session.
Yes.
We have a little short break now for like 10 minutes. And then we will start at 12:15 until 12:55 with a number of concurrent poster sessions in rooms 2 and 3. We'll come back here for another plenary talk at 1 with Professor Marina Orsini-Jones. So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the day.
Welcome, Assalamu alaikum. On behalf of the Educational Research Lab at Prince Sultan University, I'd like to welcome you all to the first International Symposium on Educational Research. Before we start the session, allow me to share some housekeeping to ensure a smooth session. Firstly, attendees, during this session, we will welcome your questions to the speaker in the question and answer section, not the chat box. We will address your questions to the speaker at the end of this session. Secondly, please share your comments about the conference on our lab Twitter account using the symposium hashtag. The account and hashtag are written for you in the chat box. And lastly but not least, speakers, please, you have 25 minutes, so we're going to remind you 5 minutes just before the end and 2 minutes before the end of the time. And I'll just do that by a polite reminder. Okay. At the end of this session, I'm going to read the questions from the attendees for you, and then you can answer them live. If time runs short, then if you could leave your email, then they can contact you if that's okay with you. So now, without
You know, so it is just okay. It's just I got a little answer garden at the end, and they can also post things there, but I'll talk about that later.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Professor Marina Mauricini Jones. She holds the title Associate Head of School Global Engagement in the School of Humanities, Coventry University, UK. And she's going to speak to us on agile blended learning, higher education futures for the fluid post-COVID new normal.
That was a bit of a mouthful.
It was.
Okay, nice to meet you all. I'm very honored to have been invited by my good friend Hala Dalbani, whom I had the pleasure to have at Coventry University as a visiting scholar, auditing my classes on the Masters in English Language Teaching and Applied Linguistics. And it's very nice to see Hala here again and to see you all coming from all parts of the world. I can see very interesting audience. And I'm very honored to be a part of this new initiative. And I can see how advanced you are in this research center. So thank you very much for inviting me. Okay, and I'd just like to start, give you an idea of the session plan. Emerging trends, which are well represented in this conference from what I can see in the titles and some of the sessions I managed to attend. What should be taken forward in terms of lessons learned from COVID? 1 or 2 case studies of research I have carried out. I hope I have time for both. And some of your recommendations and conclusions following what I say. So first of all, I think we have to point out that we are in an age of complexity. It's been unique to be part of a pandemic. It doesn't happen very often. There was the plague in 1300, and then we had other things, but it doesn't happen so often that you're thrown in at the deep end as an educator. So new things are emerging and new ways of learning and teaching, as we all know. But the most important area where I can see a big evolution is the blurring between formal and informal learning, which we had a bit in the 90s, 2000s. I've been in e-learning for a long time, as you can see. But COVID has really accelerated this. So now the forced remote delivery we had for us in March 2020, I don't know when it was for you, is really changed this and is help us to redefine learning spaces. So the other thing which is emerging from what I'm doing and research I do with students in teacher education and educators is the need to really include new literacies and a lot of training in what we do. So I just want to take the opportunity to, first of all, start with a big report, which you'll be able to access after my talk. And it's been written by very famous leaders in higher education in the world, and also EdTech experts, and also other education experts with technology. And they come up with this technology-enabled teaching and learning at scale. And what they discuss in this report, mainly, I'm summarizing it a lot, it's 60, 70 pages. You can have a look at it. There are many case studies which could be inspirational for you. I think what it does, it tells you about personalization of the learning journey, very important, as I mentioned, blurring of formal, informal, personalization of our students and our staff learning journey, because, you know, staff we're always learning, particularly in the last few months. How we widen participation and how do we enable through technology to include. Technology can be exclusive. There've been issues with digital poverty. Students of my masters don't all have a laptop. And if they don't come to Coventry because of COVID, they're stuck in Bangladesh where the internet connection is not very good. And that is problematic for us. So how do we address these new contingencies created by a COVID pandemic? And also something which was not in the report, but I have my international associate head hat on. So how can we create geographically distant communities of practice, COPs, which can enhance our understanding of teaching and learning? And this today is one of them. So today we are part of an interesting community of practice that I hope we can all learn from each other. So the findings of the report is that, well, first of all, the future of higher education is blended, and we're moving in and out of blends all the time. So for example, in Austria, they're going into lockdown next week, they're going back into full remote teaching. in Europe. In the UK, we're trying to stay in hybrid mode, so students can choose if they're coming to class, if they're accessing from home, or how they're accessing the materials. In other countries like yours, I understand you're back to full face-to-face, but you might go back. So the idea is that we have to learn not only to scale up teaching, learning, blended teaching, learning, but we also need to devise flexible, blended and fluid delivery and be able to swap quickly, which is a challenge because, we've been really challenged of late. We've had so much to do. And the other thing is we need intentional pedagogy informed, personalized and outcome focused design. So it's very important we look at the pedagogy, not the technology, which is often a mistake we make. We get very excited with technology and we then go with the technology instead of the affordances of the pedagogy first. But of course, it's also true, like McLuhan said, the medium is a message. Media really have been game changers. Zoom, we are using today, has been a game changer for the purpose of education across the world. And I don't know if you remember old Skype. I did my exchanges in old Skype before. It's a different story to be on Zoom. And the other thing they found that we are really to go student-centric because students have experienced managing their learning at the time of the pandemic. Of course, there'll be future students who have not experienced that, but now the word is out that you can tailor and you can decide and you create your pathways. So this has really changed. And of course, you also have to do that within your subjects, but also within the ethos, the vision, the philosophy of your institution. So this GIST report really has given us the opportunity to think and reflect, this is leadership across the world, on the new challenges, but also the awareness of and confidence with digital ways of doing things for staff and students, which were not contemplated before, because we were sitting in our comfy classroom areas and we were not challenged by this. Now we really have to do it, because I've been an expert in e-learning for over 30 years, but I never had to teach online until March 2020. So we really had a different experience. And really, we need to be aware of what is out there to make the most of it, and also sharpen student engagement and accessibility to widen participation in an ethical way, which contemplates and factors this in digital poverty, because we want to give the same opportunities to all. So this idea of the high flex is not new. This word was born in 2007-8. It's not new, but the way it has become is really got maxi flex now, muscle, because hybrid learning is what we do. And students can change their mode of attendance. They change, topics. They get bored much easier than before because they've experienced this. And now, of course, let me just, that's it. Just to give you an idea, when I'm talking about holistic and agile digital teaching and learning ecosystems that allow personalization, I think institutions have to look at ways in which they can look at the full picture. So it can't be the Department of Geography or Engineering looking at something. At Coventry, we tend to go big way. I was part of the task force which introduced the first VLE. We were the second university in the UK to introduce WebCT, it was called, back in 1996, even before Hala came to visit us in 2010. And we have been engaged in thinking globally as an institution, as a group providing education, how we can make the most of education. So there is always the thinking of the levels. What is your core? What do you integrate at the core? What is the center, most important aspect of your pedagogy? What do you value? We value student-to-student communication. We value international cross-exchanges. So we went for a new VLE, and the post staff at Coventry University were hit by the pandemic and were hit by moving from Moodle to Aula, this new VLE, at the same time, you can imagine. But we can raise to the challenge. So what is your core element? And core element for us, as you can see, is Aula at the center. What do you support and recommend? And what do you manage, use? Now, there are restrictions in the UK because we have a very strict privacy law. So for example, a lot of you probably use Google Docs and use Google Drive. We are not allowed to do that because Google server sits in the States, which doesn't comply with the European General Data Protection Regulation for privacy. So there are also those elements when you work internationally, you have to bear in mind. So you might be working with my colleagues from Vietnam, which I'm doing right now, and we discover we can't use some things they use, and they can't use things we use. So that agility and flexibility has to come into it if you want to work on a global scale, global and local. So a future of immersive, of course, I can see your Twitter account has AR elements and AI elements, so artificial intelligence and augmented reality elements. But there are some examples of good practice of how you create a whole ecosystem of kind of software or planning where teachers and students can modify the environment. And this is Arizona State, always been ahead of everybody else, most of us, probably not you, because you seem to be quite ahead of a lot of things. But this idea of, for example, a MOOC can be very static, a massive open online course can be static. At Arizona State, they've created a new platform where students emphasize their learning by doing. They're given control. They can navigate and create the navigation, use adaptive technology and graphically rich content. This is just an example. And of course, there are other things happening. For example, before I do that, yes, this idea of normalization. So we can see COVID as really normalized our attitudes. And Steve Bax, who unfortunately has died not long ago, a big expert on how technology affects what we do based at the Open University UK, we have now accepted that technology is part of what we do, which wasn't exactly there before. My research shows most of my students in teacher education were quite against integrated technology. And when I used to ask, what is the technology you can mention you would like to use? Can you guess what they came up with? Can you put it in the chat? I used to say, before the pandemic, can you mention a technology you could use in your classrooms? What do you think they came up with? Can you put it in the chat? Okay, something wrong in the chat? Somebody can't see it? PowerPoint. Who, that person wins. Redouane El Abdadi. Yes, thank you very much. And I've had a big fight against the PowerPoint lecturers. I appoint lecturers. And when I ask what is the technology you can do and they mention PowerPoint, they're struck off from my interview immediately. They don't get the job. But PowerPoint used to be the answer all the time. You know what? In the last few months, I've never heard PowerPoint again. So that has happened, and to me is a big advantage and a big change. So going to next now, of course, things are happening. You know, Facebook is not called Facebook anymore. It's called Meta. And what I like to do is to go just very briefly, a minute or two. Some of you might already seen this. There is a big debate on what this means for higher education. And I think I'll have probably to stop sharing.
We're starting to get a sense of how it could all come together.
Sorry, I'm going to stop share the PowerPoint a second. And I'm going to share Mark Zuckerberg. You probably know the guy. Just a bit of him, not too much, don't worry.
And what it could feel like. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. Rather than just focusing on this year's products like a normal keynote, we're going to talk about the future. So let's start by exploring what different kinds of metaverse experiences could feel like, starting with the most important experience of all, connecting with people. Imagine you put on your glasses or headset and you're instantly in your home space. It has parts of your physical home recreated virtually. It has things that are only possible virtually. And it has an incredibly inspiring view of whatever you find most beautiful.
Hey, are you coming?
Yeah, just gotta find something to wear. All right, perfect. Oh, hey, Mark. Hey, what's going on?
Hi.
Mark.
What's up, Mark?
Okay, this is blurring to another level, okay? This is blurring at the metaverse level. So now, not only you blur learning experiences, you blur life, virtual reality, augmented reality, what opportunities are there for teaching and learning, if you can be at home and not at home, if you can be in the metaverse. It's a bit like Interstellar. I don't know if you saw that film. So I don't want to go there yet, because I think there is a big hype, and I've heard a lot of hype about artificial intelligence, which is is gearing up as well. But I'm still a bit skeptical. And I mean, the problem here if you want to convert me to AI, do, because I'm still wondering. And I went through Second Life, I experienced that. It is very demanding on bandwidth. And 1 hour of Second Life used to take the same energy which used to power the whole of Africa. And I had ethical issues with that. So when we go into technology, we also have to think, who is it for? What is it for? Is it ethical what we do? So I'm sorry, I'm getting big, I don't know too much spiel here. But in terms of what we can do, if we reverse back from Metaverse, there are ways of doing internationalization, for example, which don't require necessarily artificial intelligence, even if you can include it. So I believe very much in telecollaboration for knowledge sharing, and it's quite powerful. And it is, you can call it telecollaboration, collaborative online international learning, but it's supported by research, sustained by technology, and you have people chatting to each other, geographically separated, but really knowledge sharing about powerful topics. So what we also do, despite the fact that MOOCs are quite static, sometimes they are useful sharing virtual textbooks. And of course, I think Hilary, Professor Nazio gave a talk, would agree with that on a particular Corpus MOOC. So she would probably think it would be useful for you to use it to learn more about Corpus. And it could be a starting point for a dialogue on Corpus linguistics. In my case, I chose a MOOC which was about language learning and teaching from the University of Southampton and the British Council. And it happened to have very similar topics to what I cover on my master's. So we piggybacked on the MOOC and we repurposed it. And why? Because we were trying to do this, so trying to reuse it. I'm a big believer in reusing learning objects and reusing materials instead of inventing new wheels. We want to debunk the myth of the native speaker. And I was in a meeting yesterday with English language teaching experts, and we can't really debunk it because it's the commonest expression used, but I prefer L1 and L2, because if we believe in native speakerism, we never give a chance to the majority of teachers of English in the world to have their word, and they are the majority of teachers of English in the world. And also we want to decolonize English language teaching through a global community of practice, which has been enabled by technology. Before we had Zoom, it wasn't that good. Skype wasn't that good. Before we had Zoom, we had asynchronous on VLEs. That was terrible. It didn't work. Now we have Zoom, it's really been enabled. And we also want to encourage meta-reflection. Whatever you're teaching doesn't have to be English. Of course, we use English as medium of education. That is a new terminology, incidentally. We're moving away from EMI. We're moving towards EME. The British Council favors EME. And we want to encourage reflection in action. And if you are a teacher teaching online for the first time in your life, why not join a CPD online with teachers from all over the world, where you share what the issue is while you're teaching, after you're teaching, and for future action for what you want to teach. So we want to have this global community of practice. And why global? Because you have your class, if allowed, if COVID allows, you have your class in class, you have your class with your partners, wherever they are, and then you have the global community of practice of the MOOC. If you look at the map, I hope you can see the map. Can you all see the map, incidentally? Have
yes, we can see.
Okay, so as you can see, these are the people who were taking the MOOC at the time we were taking the MOOC with our students and the students' partners in China and Spain for part of this. So we were discussing task-based language learning, content and language integrated learning, online language learning, and global Englishes with all those people. So you can see how powerful it is in terms of ripples of shared knowledge. And the research questions were these. I don't think I've got time to read them, so I'm going to skip, but you can really look at them yourself afterwards. And also this idea that technology enabled us to have a global community of international practice, decolonizing the ELT curriculum from the experts' point of view as well. And none of these people is British. Well, I am now. I've just got British citizenship after Brexit. That was a little thing I had to do. But as you can see, we have decolonization going also in terms of topics and how we recruit speakers for the virtual exchange. And in this respect, then what came out, these are the students. And of course, when you use Padlet, which I find is very powerful, I suppose you use Padlet as well, very easy to set up. You can also see where the weaknesses of your learners are. So some of my students thinking that the dreaded PPP adopted by CELT and Delta is task-based learning. So you spot that and you can address it. You can keep it anonymous so you don't threaten your learners, or you can do it not anonymous. So these are really new affordances which were recent, not last 2-3 years really. Don't know how many of you have used Padlet for this. And then you can also encourage your learners to reflect on the process of learning, what they're learning. These are students in teacher education and teachers in teacher education. So this idea of having the global community of practice facilitated by technology, and the idea of sharing practice between Spain, China. My students are from all over the world, so I have 20 nationalities. Hala knows that because she was there with us. And also the benefits. So these teachers who thought technology was terrible and online was terrible and PowerPoint was the only option, then gain new insights. And then they can see that it is useful and it debunks their beliefs as well. So just, I will skip a bit fast because I can see the time. So you see, we have, I think as an educator, it's not that I want to change everybody's beliefs, but unfortunately in language learning and teaching, a lot of students and teacher educators believe in audiolingualism because that's their favorite to date. They really like audiolingualism and behaviorism. And it takes me a while to convince them that's not the case. But if we get there through this kind of exchange, it is quite powerful. And so they change their beliefs about technology as well, and creating online classes. And this, I love this. As a teacher, I soon realized it was very effective and left room for creativity. So when technology enables creativity, it is then powerful. And I'm quite, I'm not very creative myself. That's why I like technology. It enables me to be creative. And of course, you can't convert everybody. So in terms of results, this was result from the last round of this Be Melted. There is one person who still hates technology. So they stay in there, but the majority are converted. Majority, because neither agree nor disagree can be quite negative as well. Now, just to come into the end of I've got 1 minute for Viva Excel. This is a virtual Vietnam exchange financed by the British Council. And this is the word cloud we got from the NVivo collection of their journals, of the teachers' journals. These are teachers in Vietnam and the UK. One group from an NGO, Migrant and Refugee Center, one group, my students on masters here, one group, Vietnamese teachers and learners of English to become English teachers. And as you can see, the word cloud shows what they learned, and a surprise outcome. It's not a surprise, but what we found that they were used to using all these tools and they used Zoom before, but what they didn't know was how interesting breakout rooms were. So they used Zoom, but they didn't really use breakout rooms. They didn't let their students go into breakout rooms. So what is emerging from this research I'm doing with Vietnam is how important the breakout room is, but how challenging it is as well. And how the teachers is challenged in managing the breakout room. And so I'll just finish with some tips on managing breakout rooms, which we found are useful. They're not mine. They come from Morehouse, Lee and Walsh, recently published paper on e-classroom interactional competencies, but focusing on the various aspects. And I like to add an I, because I think they're missing out on intercultural. So to me, it is e-seek. And I'm nearly finished, so give me 1 minute, please. So I think now in this new world, if you keep going hybrid, high flex, if we have to go back online, we have to be aware of what Mark Zuckerberg has also caught up with immediately. The issue of presence in an online world, the issue of presence in hybrid, the issue of presence in breakout rooms. So we have to learn to do all these things, and teachers have really need to be trained much more. We need a lot of practice in action, on action for action. And so conclusion or reflections, institution-wide high flex formats, holistic approaches, big data analysis, important. We need to know what our students are doing, how they navigate this, and don't believe the Prensky's digital native myth. My students can't even put together a PowerPoint, going back to PowerPoint, and they're doing a master's in English teaching. So, let's not go there. But anyway, some of them, not all of them, but, don't assume that the digital natives are digital natives, because they don't have the critical digital skills they need to handle technology and what we're doing. And the idea of this global approach and keeping an eye on the present and future, the metaverse, AI, AR, like you're doing at the ERL, your research center is doing that. So to finish with, I think I'm doing not too badly, only 2 minutes late. What I'll do now, I'm going to ask you to contribute through Answer Garden, which is anonymous, so no fear. Sorry. So I'm going to put the Answer Garden link in the chat, and I'll take other questions while you can type in the chat. So I'll put my Answer Garden.
On behalf of the Educational Research Lab at Prince Sultan University, I would like to welcome you all to the first International Symposium on Educational Research, ERL2021. The following session is a paper presentation entitled Preparing Students for College Success in the Digital Age, a 16-page framework for research and policy that is presented by Professor Janina Brett-Griffler from the State University of New York at Buffalo, USA. Now, before we start the session, allow me to share some housekeeping to ensure a smooth session. Firstly, for attendees, during this session, we welcome your questions to the speaker, of course, in the Q&A section, not the chat box, please. We will address your questions to the speaker at the end of the session. Secondly, of course, please do share your comments about the conference on our lab Twitter account using the Symposium hashtag. The account and hashtag are written for you in the chat box you'll see later on. And thirdly, for speakers, Professor Janine, of course, please note that I will inform you at your 5 minutes mark and 2 minutes mark before the end of the time. And I'm going to give you a sign via my camera or with a polite voice reminder at the end. At the end of the session, I'll read the attendees' questions for you and you can answer, of course. That takes care of the housekeeping. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Professor Janina Brett-Griffler from the State University of New York at Buffalo, USA. Professor Janina is Associate Dean of International Education and Language Programs Director, Center for Comparative and Global Studies in Education, University of Buffalo. She is the Academic Vice Dean of Education and Language Programs at the State University of New York, and she has served as the head of Department of Educational Leadership and Policy and director of the Research Center in Comparative and Global Education. She is a well-known author for many books, which include World English, A Study of Its Development, winner of an award from the Modern Language Association of the US, Bilingualism and Language Pedagogy, and English Ethnicity. And she is the editor of the International Journal of Applied Linguistics in Wiley-Blackwell. Please join me in welcoming Professor Janina. Professor Janina, over to you.
Thank you kindly for this introduction. And hello, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be part of this extremely timely and high quality program at this ERL 2021 Symposium. Congratulations on putting this together. Let me take a moment and say a word of thank you to PSU's senior leadership for their unwavering commitment to language research and teaching. I also want to say a special thank you to Dr. Nora Al-Mushahar, ERL leader, and her team. It is particularly proud moment for me as Dr. Nora worked with me at UB for many years. I could not ask for a better community of colleagues as part of the ongoing collaboration of our two institutions. Finally, I want to thank everyone who is joining this session. It's great to see everyone, if only virtually. I begin by noting that education throughout the world is undergoing a transformation, the like of which we have not experienced for many decades. The import of digital technologies and the phenomenon of the introduction of English as a medium of instruction, EMI, have redefined our practices and draw the attention of researchers and policymakers. This is also an exciting time for applied linguistics that places the field in interdisciplinary and cross-academic unit collaborations in higher education institutions. The current trend toward the expansion of EMI is linked to the growth of English I documented in my book, World English. One of the key phenomena that I have investigated there and in other empirical studies on dual language program is that English has been leading to the development of societal bilingualism as the world languages establish itself alongside other languages, thus in addition to and not instead of learning other languages. Hence, the use of English occurs within the historical development of multilingualism and emphasizes the need for what I call multilingual proficiency. And let me just see how I can show you the slide. It seems like I may not be able to get the PowerPoint that I have presented to move forward. So,
sorry, can I come to the rescue? I had the same problem. Right click and click next. That's what I did in the end.
Right click?
And click the next to the top. I did it that way because it wouldn't click forward for me either.
Okay.
Yeah, it has worked.
You can see it.
Okay. It skipped to the next slide. But as I said, the use of English occurs within the historical development of multilingualism and emphasizes the need for what I call multilingual proficiency. Here's one of the consequences. As part of this process, we see the exponential and rapid growth of English medium of EMI programs across higher educational systems, including in Saudi Arabia, where the Ministry of Education has identified English language proficiency as one of its 11 key goals and as central to Vision 2030. Education, no doubt, both contributes to and is influenced by the status of English as an international language of communication. Statistics like the ones I have included here offer fascinating reading as we look at the publishing trends from a longitudinal perspective and across databases in the natural and social sciences. English is trending for the moment as the language of publishing. If we look at the various databases I have listed on this slide, we see English taking on a key role in this domain. In the ERIC database approaching 100% and trending in the 90s across some other major databases. see in this slide, 39% of the titles are in English on the global online library WorldCat, amounting to almost 200 million titles. With that trend towards English as context, let me highlight a few themes that emerge. As higher education systems increasingly adopt EMI, it is putting pressure on the secondary education sector to prepare students for university. Learners face the dual challenge of learning disciplinary content in a new language along with academic literacies, all at advanced levels. As a result, applied linguistics finds itself in a unique place that involves interdisciplinary collaborations across academic fields and the creation of new designs of learning environments and curricula that put emphasis on learning outcomes. Despite the widespread and growing interest in the phenomenon, research in EMI and curricula models are at an early stage. In my talk today, I want to draw our attention to the interconnection between all three levels of P16 education and how we can make our students more college ready. And I want to tie it into the conference's theme of innovative approaches in teaching and learning within the digital revolution. A central point I want to convey is that the impact of the digital revolution shows up not only in the changing conditions of teaching and learning, we also see it in the learner population itself, especially the young people who have been dubbed digital natives, given the profound imprint of the digital world on their minds. To tailor language pedagogy to their needs, we must listen for and recognize what I call the digital signal, that is the profound imprint of technology on their language using minds. The digital revolution is not itself a language as such, but the world of the digital native does require, but also facilitate, suitably modifying methodology if we know where to look. We can locate the digital signal in some perhaps unexpected places. To illustrate the point, I will highlight the results of a study that I have carried out with my colleagues at PSU on English learning. Students entering this and other EMI universities face the dual challenge of learning complex content in the various disciplines in a language that they are still developing. They are making the difficult transition from secondary school, where they studied English as a subject, to university where they study in English. As part of our research collaboration, our goal was to gain the student perspective on their level of preparation that they are coming out within the upper secondary schools in English, with an eye towards college entry. We wanted to get a better sense of the students' preparation together with their proficiency. What were their experiences in the classroom? In what areas did they feel less confident and think they need to know more? To judge the degree to which all of these data points are context dependent, as you can see from this slide, I ran that data collection across different national settings, including Saudi Arabia, the Republic of Korea, and China. Curriculum content will and should be very depending on who the learners are, their purposes of learning, and the context in which they are learning. This slide lists the total number of participants and the breakdown, as well as describing the purpose, components, and the reliability of the entire survey. I will report on the findings from the Saudi context, but to give a sense of their context dependence, I will present them jointly with the results from the other two study sites. As this slide shows, there were 207 secondary student participants in the Saudi section of the study. They completed a survey instrument I designed that was disseminated in the Riyadh region. The student respondents were in the final year of the secondary school. On average, they started studying English in grade 3. 3/4 of them reported that their parents know English. a much higher percentage than in the other national contexts. Perhaps most important for our purposes is that 94% are college-bound, and English proficiency is one of the key competencies needed to succeed. The Saudi participants consistently identified the need for English proficiency to succeed at university as one of the key reasons they are learning English. Saudi students rate the importance of English for their future success in their professional lives the highest, higher than the Korean and Chinese peers, and they especially express their belief that English will provide them with better employment opportunities. As one participant described it in the open-ended section of the survey, English is the required language at this age, or another phrased it, it is an important language in life. As this slide shows, we ask the students to assess their English proficiency in the 4 skills: writing, speaking, reading, listening. In these kinds of self-assessments of the students' language proficiency, we're looking for how confident they feel in each of the skills in comparison to the others. How prepared do the students feel to make the transition to college? We also checked this against qualitative data from the survey that the students completed. The results shown here demonstrate that the students felt most confident in English listening, followed by reading, writing, and speaking. Productive skills were rated lower by the students, meaning that they feel less confident in their productive skills. 2 factors proved particularly important in self-ascription of proficiency. This slide details the results of our statistical analysis of English proficiency by the grade students started learning English. As you can see here, there are a lot of numbers, but what they ultimately tell us is that first, students who start learning English at school in grade 1 were more proficient in each of the 4 English skills than those who started in grade 6. Second, compared to students who started in grade 4, they were also more proficient in English productive skills. Some more numbers on this slide describing our statistical analysis of student English proficiency by parents' knowledge of English. The bottom line here is that student-rated English proficiency in the 4 English skills was significantly higher for students whose parents know English than those who do not know, as was also true in both the Chinese and Korean cohorts. This slide depicts the correspondence students see between English proficiency and future success in professional life broken down by the 4 skills. There are a few major takeaways here. If we aggregate the results with qualitative data, we find that the students were well aware of what benefits English skills bring. They perceived that English, especially English speaking, is an important gatekeeper for employment and social mobility. For example, almost all of the students, 96%, believe that English proficiency would help them get better jobs. They especially rank spoken communication skills as the most important for future success, even though they consider themselves least competent in speaking. As significant, Saudi students view literacy skills as equally important as oral communication skills, whereas Chinese and Korean students regard these skills as less important. The Saudi students recognize the importance of literacy in placing more weight on literacy skills than the other 2 groups, particularly for entering college. This slide reports our findings on the number of hours each cohort studies English in school and their level of satisfaction with that amount of time. It tells us that Saudi students both have the fewest hours per week and are the least satisfied with that amount. Given their high expectations, perhaps it is not surprising that the Saudi high school students feel less satisfied with their preparation than the Korean and Chinese students. In particular, the Saudis perceive that the amount of time spent on English learning in school is not sufficient for their needs, while the Korean and Chinese subjects in the study were generally satisfied that the instructional time devoted to English was the right amount. These perceptions match the actual time devoted to studying English at school. The Chinese and Korean students spent 4 or more hours on the subject, whereas the Saudi students report averaged about 2 to 3 hours per week. As shown here in a breakout analysis of Saudi students only, the correlation of the two is even more pronounced. Students who thought there is too little instructional time in English judge their own proficiency to be lower than those who believed English instruction occupied the right amount of the school week. These findings suggest that instructional time does yield the desired results in increased proficiency, but also that students partly judge the effectiveness of the curriculum by how well it meets their needs. In other words, students make savvy educational consumers who are sensitive to not getting their money's worth, as it were. For that reason, more than a quarter of the Saudi high school students call for curriculum change with the goal of increasing their English proficiency. This next slide records that the Saudi students report a positive correlation between the amount of time their teachers use English during a lesson and their perceived English proficiency across 4 language skills. The more teachers use English during a lesson, the more confident these students are in their proficiency in English speaking, writing, and reading. This positive relationship only exists for the Saudi students in the study. In fact, the Koreans, the opposite relationship exists. The more teachers use English during a lesson, the less Korean students perceive that they are proficient in English reading and listening. Their teachers seem to perceive this effect. The Saudi teachers use English more during a lesson than teachers in Korea and China. The Saudi teachers use English on average for about half of the class, which was much longer than Chinese and Korean teachers. As displayed here, we also asked the students what kind of support their schools provide. Saudi schools give students more opportunities working with native English-speaking teachers and exchange programs compared to Chinese and Korean schools. Chinese and Korean students report that their school support consists mostly in providing materials such as books and after-school activities. The digital signal we pick up in the findings appears in the questions that probe the motivation of students for learning English and how they use language outside of the classroom. This slide shows the reasons students give for studying English. Saudi students attest to the importance of English for their professional futures. In contrast to Korean and Chinese students for whom college entrance exams is the most important motivation. Saudis cite the desire to converse with friends as the strongest motivation for extending their English learning outside of school. For them, English carries both the instrumental functions that dominate in Korea and China, as well as sociocultural functions, those linking them to other members of the communities to which they belong. That comes out even more strongly in the next slide, which reports on the question of where students use the language outside of the classroom. Saudi students use English in online contexts, including social media. Here's where the world of these digital natives differs from that of preceding generations. The domain in which they put most effort into using English, the world of social media, requires them not only to speak, read, or listen, but above all, to write. When Saudi high school students use English outside the classroom on social media for purposes of writing, they make use of exactly the skill on which they need the most work. It translates to how they like to learn in the classroom. The findings reported in this slide clearly show the trace of this strong digital signal from these students. Like their Korean and Chinese peers, they prefer learning English via popular culture, movies, songs, games. But there is still a difference. The next most popular method for Chinese and Korean students is to listen to the teacher's lecture, followed by reading English books. In contrast, Saudi students prefer conversation with friends, followed by social media. Given the students' motivation and preferred ways of learning, Saudi students are thereby more oriented to developing English communication skills, whereas Chinese and Korean students are more exam-oriented. These preferences present Saudi teachers with a notable opportunity, one that might be invisible today. I want to put all of this in the context of the writing to learn content approach that is increasingly used in EMI institutions of higher education for advanced specialized degrees such as the master's or the doctorate. It aims to develop advanced language, academic genres, and aid knowledge in different content areas. Prior to the rise of social media, there were far fewer domains that young people would find as captivating as social media that require writing, which neither conversation nor other elements of popular media such as music or watching films do. Here's one way that technology is transforming the learner population of Saudi Arabia in a direction we might not have expected. They feel a strong motivation to practice their writing outside of classroom instruction. That is something well worth leveraging, given how important a tool writing is for learning, including in content areas. Students studying STEM, business, or the humanities require the ability to distinguish different genres involved in the tasks they will encounter. As they transition from personal narrative writing to more challenging genres such as expository or persuasive essay writing, students need to develop genre awareness and the linguistic skills to produce advanced writing and comprehension of texts. It can take the form of a curriculum built around subject matter, which then drives the instructional text and the kinds of tasks learners do. Writing promotes language development in important ways. It provides time and space for monitoring, for the reflective use of language, and for the incorporation of corrective feedback. Student writers, and Cummings has noted, do a more in-depth monitoring of their language production than they can do when conversing. Writing is also a great tool for use in peer-to-peer learning and collaborative learning approaches. Looking from a cognitive standpoint, writing triggers processes that are involved in second language learning, such as noticing, hypothesis testing, metalinguistic awareness, all leading to long-term acquisition. It is a means to promote both the problem-solving and meaning-making inherent to language learning. Looking from a social standpoint, it is also the act of authoring the self, one that is by its nature social. That social nature comes through in social media, despite some of the negative attention social media has generated recently, including its impact on the psyches of young people. One of the reasons is that when young Saudis write in English on social media, they are acutely aware of the audience, the social nature of language. We might almost say that they are at no time more aware of audience than when writing on social media, in which they self-consciously offer a self to show to the world. This is actually, in this instance, very good news, as I want to emphasize in drawing a few conclusions. Using social media as scaffolding, we can not only build the writing skills from that authoring of the self in English, but we can teach them genre awareness, the difference in the use of language appropriate to social media as opposed to that of higher education. That kind of writing is certainly a very different genre, but the fact that they enthusiastically use English to write on their own initiative is already half the battle won. The need to get them to transition from personal writing to expository writing is a significant one and doable. It involves designing the sort of curriculum content that they already want to see. In qualitative data, Saudi subjects clearly voice the need for curriculum change in secondary schools to prepare students for university. As one of them put it, treating the curriculum as a secondary level and not primary level curriculum will facilitate the transition to university. Okay, so I will stop here, and I will be happy to address a few questions. I have prepared a little bit more, so if there is time to share, I'll be happy to do that. But I understand that we are running out of time.
Yes, indeed we are. But that was amazing. Thank you very much, Professor Janina, and spot on timing there. Actually, that was a great session. On the topic that that you have discussed for everyone, of course, that just joined, maybe, which is preparing students for college success in the digital age, a P16 framework for research and policy. It was quite insightful, and your argument has opened a new perspective onto this area of interest, of course. We really appreciate your contribution, and I think it's maybe time to open up for some questions. I do believe there is one question already for you in the chat box, and I can happily read that for you. Just give me a second. So Professor Marina asks, could there be an intercultural dimension in the Saudi students' perception?
Yes. Certainly, as I reported, students look at English as a means of meaning making across different functional domains, and they are looking not only from the instructional standpoint, instrumental standpoint, that is how that relates to their academic advancement. They're also looking at English as a means of interaction across the different speech communities they belong. And I believe this is where research can further deepen this data. The attitudes towards English among Saudi students seems to be very positive. They look at English as a means of communication that is part of their identity, that is part of additive bilingualism of who they are. So it seems that more research in this area is needed in terms of what that cultural component is or would be for Saudi students. But certainly Saudi students look at English using English across different domains in terms of as a communication system.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Janina, and thank you for your contribution on this great session.